So we are back with part 3 of lesson 8. We're working on our cart page. I think I found an issue for dealing with our session. I was silly, just missing reference, but we will come back to that. So we've got our cart. So we need to deal with the duplicates. We need to deal with removing of cart, but I think we can fix up the cart username problem. So I wrote this get customer ID method and then commented it out. I'm just going to put it back. So what we want to check here is we want to check for a string called customer ID, a session variable called customer ID. Now it doesn't recognize this, and I was silly because all I need to do is reference ASP.NET Core.HTTP, and then of course we have access to the getString method. In fact, we've got getString and getInt, as well as setString and setInt. Now later on, this will become more complicated. We'll need an extension for this later, but not today. We will when we get to checkout. So if we do not have a customer ID in the session variable, we want to set it. Now there are two scenarios here. If our customer has logged in, we can use their email address as their customer ID. If the customer hasn't logged in, then we can use the GUID class to generate a unique ID for their session and attach the cart items to their session this way. So if it's null, we'll initialize customer ID to an empty string. If user is logged in, use their email as session var. So if our user is authenticated, we'll use their email address, which is the user.identity.name. If the user has not logged in, we'll use the GUID class. We'll create a new GUID and convert it to a string. So in this case, user is anonymous. So generate random ID to attach to their session. And then store. We want to store the customer ID in session variable. So in this case, we'll call setString. So the key will be called customer ID. So we're going to have one of two values in their session variable. Either their email address, if we know who they are, or some new random string that we're going to generate and attach to each user's session. And then lastly, we're just going to return the session variable. So this takes care of all three scenarios. The first scenario, we have no session variable but the customer's logged in. Great, we'll use their email. Second scenario, there's no session variable. The user hasn't logged in, so we're going to generate an identifier for their session. The third scenario is we've already got some identifier in the session, one way or the other. So we'll just use the existing session variable. We don't need to go through this algorithm to actually set it. So the first time someone puts something in the cart, we're probably going to go into this part. Once they've already put an item in the cart, any subsequent items they add to their cart, we'll just read the existing session variable. So the session variable only needs to get set once. And then it can just be read if the user continually puts more and more items in their cart. So I'll leave this method up. It doesn't, but we don't need to worry about that, Megan, because here's why. Let's go through that scenario. Okay? So user comes as an anonymous user. There's nothing in the cart. The first time they put an item in the cart, here's the logic. It's going to check, right? Do we have a session variable, yes or no? Is it null? So it is going to be null, so it's going to go in here. Our second check, has the user logged in? So in the scenario, Megan, you're outlining, the answer is no. So we're going to go into the else, right? So it's going to generate an ID like ABC123, okay? We stick ABC123 in the session variable and we return that. So now when we save that first item, it's attached to customer ID ABC123. You with me so far? Let's say they're still anonymous. They add another item to the cart. So when they do, we call this method again. Then it will check, is there a session variable? Yes, there is. So we'll just return the current session variable, ABC123. So now we've added 2 items into the database with ABC123. Now they go and log in. It's now, their username is customer@gc.ca. They go and put a third item in the cart. Well, what happens here? The logic still runs. Is the session variable null? No, it's not. It's already set as ABC123. So even though they've logged in, we can still we still have that same customer ID, that same session. So we can add that third item. It's still going to be ABC123. So we can actually try it, but it should be okay. So we need to modify now this line. Instead of hard coding our customer ID as random customer, we're going to invoke our get customer ID method instead, right? This will return the current session variable. And if the session variable is blank, it'll generate it for us. So I should be able to go back and start putting items in the cart again. We'll also want to change the query here because we don't want all the items in the shopping cart, in the cart items table. We only want the ones that are filtered for this custom. We'll leave it like this first. We'll just see if our algorithm is working when we add to cart. So I'll just build. And we'll have to try these different scenarios. Okay, session has not been configured. I think we may have to move the code in startup a little bit. Go back to startup. I'm going to move the session support up here to the top of our configure method. And try one more time. If not, again, I'll leave it for now and we'll move on to the other pieces. Okay, so that seems to work now. So I had the session support down at the bottom. It needs to come before some of these other statements. Think in particular the routing statement. So I can add to cart. And now you can see, here's my customer ID. I get this long random string. If I put another item into the cart now, my customer ID should be the same if I'm in my same Firefox browser session. So now you can see I've attached 2 items to that one shopping cart. If I go and use a different browser, I'll try Chrome, I should have a different cart altogether. So now I can shop. I'll buy Animal Farm here again. But now different customer ID because it's a different browser session. So this is the result that we need. We now need to add this filter, this customer ID filter, into our cart page. Because right now the cart page, it shows everything in all shopping carts. Obviously, we got to change this. So we need a where clause in the query of our cart method. So go back to the shop controller in the cart. We're going to need we'll just call the get customer ID method here, and we'll add this as a where. So now on the cart page, we are filtering by customer. So we're no longer going to see all right? We want the cart items, but only one customer at a time. No customer, no user should see anybody else's shopping cart. Now, when I restart, notice the session gets wiped out. So I'm going to add one of these. I'm going to add both of Michael Lewis's books in Firefox. There's my cart. Now in Chrome. So now my cart, it's filtered. 2 different users. They're both anonymous. So now those carts are separated. Each time I restart the site or build, it's going to generate a new session. Now, we haven't tested out the scenario of a customer who's actually logged in. So I'm going to use a third browser. I'm going to use Edge. I'm going to sign in and see what happens when I add to cart that way. Or you could try a private window. So I'm going to log in as customer at gc.ca, or I could log in with a Google account. Test 1, 2, 3, $. So I'm going to log in. And now I'll shop. So I'm logged in, so my email address should show up in the cart items table. Let's check it out. Yeah, so down here, my Edge user, it can actually attach it to my email address. The cool thing about attaching it to your email address, right, is I can log out. If I log back in, go to shop, cart, my cart persists. When I'm logged in, I can leave and the items in my cart are still here because they're attached now to my profile. If I shop anonymously, I'm going to lose that. I won't have that feature. If I close the browser and come back to the site, whatever I put in the cart now is going to be gone. But we can have a persistent cart for customers who are signed in. I can log out, I can close my browser entirely. I can even go to a new browser. Go to a private window here. Go to my sign in as a customer. And when I go back, my item's here because now it's going to be attached to my profile. So if they're logged in, we can create that persistent cart without using a cookie or anything else. Kind of useful. So we want to do two more things with this, and I think we're going to call it a day. We should remove from cart. We also need to deal with the duplicates. So if I add an item that's already in my cart, I just want one cart item with a quantity of 3. I don't want the same product here twice. So let's deal with that logic. I think we'll also, for simplicity, we're going to remove the edit functionality, just in the interest of time. So in add to cart, we'll need an if statement around this logic. If the cart item already exists for this customer, we just want to change the quantity. We don't want to create a new object in this case. So we just need a little logic here to do this. So I'm just going to indent that. Does user already have this book in their cart? We'll use a .where. Our book ID equals book ID, and so we're checking, do we already have this item? And in fact, we shouldn't have, instead of where, we're going to use single or default. We just are selecting one item. We don't want a list here. We should only have this once. So then we'll say if cart item is null, then we're going to do these things. We're going to create a new cart item and call add. We could take out the var. We've already declared it here. Otherwise, we just want to update the quantity in this case. In this case, we'll say cart item quantity plus equals our quantity variable. User already has this book in cart, so update the quantity. Let me just check one thing here. I want to just double check our update. So we call, we'll call .update to make sure. So in this case, we're going to update the cart item. And in either case, we're going to call save changes. So this will now might process an insert, or else it'll just process an update. So this way, we won't get duplicates within the same user's shopping cart for the same book. They can't have it show up twice in this scenario. If we have quantity of 1 and we add another one, it's just going to change the current quantity from 1 to 2. If they don't already have it in the cart, then they can add it. We'll give this a try. I'm back here in Firefox, restarted, so my cart's empty. I'll add Lord of the Rings once. I'll add it a second time. And now my quantity is 2. I want to make it available for the whole family. I'll get 3 more. Now my quantity is 5. So we can only have one product showing up once in the shopping cart now. This check will prevent duplicates, but it'll allow us to modify our quantities. The last thing we'll do is we'll enable this delete or remove from cart. That method will be fairly simple. We really just need to know the cart item ID. We'll delete it, and we can refresh this page. That'll be the last thing we'll do here today. I'll actually push what we've done so far in case you need anything. Fix session var, cart ID, customer, and prevent duplicate cart items. We'll push that up. We'll write our remove from cart method. That should set us up well next week to do the checkout process and integrate Stripe Payment Gateway. So this will be a get method, shop remove from cart some kind of ID parameter. So this method can be fairly simple. So we'll call find on the cart items DB set. We'll remove the particular item. And we'll call save changes. We'll commit those changes to the SQL Server. And then we're just going to take the user back. We want to reload the cart page. So we'll just call a redirect to cart. So we'll reload the page and that item should be removed. Okay, so we're just using the primary key. There may be 100 people with the book in the cart. If I click remove, it should only get removed from my cart. So we're using the primary key value of the cart item. We're not using the book ID or the customer ID. So now we can just go into our cart page. Right now, this link calls shop/delete. We're going to need to change that link. We're also going to get rid of the edit link. We also want to add a little confirmation to it. I'm going to get rid of line 56. I'm going to change my link so it just says remove. Our ASP action is remove from cart. I don't need to specify the controller. If I don't specify, it'll just call this method. It'll look within the existing controller, which is the shop controller. The only other thing I'm going to do is add a little JavaScript so that when we click the remove link, the user is presented with a little pop-up confirmation. So I'm going to add to the link, unclick equals, return, confirm delete, and we'll write a little JavaScript function, same function we used in our PHP class. Just pop up a little modal window with OK and cancel buttons. Are you sure you want to delete this or remove this? So we're going to have to write this in our JS, our site.js file. We'll write a simple return, a simple confirm delete function. So under www root and JS, we've got our site.js. Right, write your JavaScript code. Okay. Function confirm delete. Just one line of JavaScript, we will return the JavaScript confirm method. Sure, you want to remove this. That's it. The confirm function takes a string as a message. It returns a Boolean. User clicks OK, it returns true. User click cancel, it returns false. So now every time we click the remove link, it's going to pop up this message with an OK and cancel button. Try it out. I got to put something back in my cart. Click remove. Say cancel. Remove. It's gone. You can put more items in the cart. One of these, one of these. I remove one of them. Other items still here. So our removal is using the primary key. So we're getting there. We'll do a few other things with this next week. I think we've done quite a lot today. We do want to show the total of the cart. We want to add buttons to keep shopping and check out. We should have a check here that shows a message that says like your cart is empty, and we should hide the table if the cart is empty. We also want a cart link in the nav bar with a little badge, a little icon that shows how many items are in the cart. So I think we'll start with those things next week. We'll make those changes to the cart page. And then we're going to work on the checkout process, where we're going to integrate Stripe Payment Gateway. And then we can process some credit card transactions through the Stripe sandbox. And we can generate a receipt and order confirmation. In preparation for doing that, I'm just going to give you a link. So for next week, what do you need to do? Let's just look at our checklist. So you should have built the cart. I'll publish everything to GitHub and YouTube shortly. Make sure you submit assignment 3. There's no quiz. The other thing I'd like you to do before next week's class, I'll put the link in the chat now, but you can find it under week 9, is I would like you to register for a free payment gateway account with Stripe. It's free. Stripe is nice enough to give us a sandbox where we can simulate credit card payments without actually charging anyone's credit card. So we will look at these documents next week because they include code samples and libraries and documentation about how we integrate Stripe into .NET app. So this is going to be our focus next week, is working with Stripe. But if you want to go ahead, just takes a minute to sign up. So if you can do that before next week's class, pretty simple. Email, name, password, they'll send you a confirmation. Yeah, I'm going to push everything to Git. Remove from the cart. Any questions before we wrap up for today? I know it was kind of a heavy lesson. The cart's fairly involved, which is why we're actually going to take two classes to do it all. Okay, so again, no quiz this week. Just sign up for Stripe, and assignment 3 due on Sunday. If you need help with assignment 3, shoot me an email or book an office hours time. Come and meet. Okay, have an excellent week, everybody. Sun's still up for another hour or so. Go get some fresh air. See you next week.